Get ready, folks. Some big changes are hitting Social Security.
Big changes.
Thanks to the Social Security Fairness Act.
Oh, yeah.
President Biden signed it. And now almost 3 million people are going to see a big boost to their benefits.
That's right. It's not just a small adjustment either. This law actually reverses 40 years of policy that a lot of people thought was unfair to public servants, first responders, and educators.
Yeah, it's a pretty big change, and we're going to break it all down today.
Oh.
If you like what you're hearing, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. We love unpacking these kind of complex topics.
Absolutely. So to really understand this new law, we have to dig into the windfall elimination provision and the government pension offset.
Okay.
These are the two big things that the Social Security Fairness Act is overturning. They basically reduced Social Security benefits for people who also got a pension from a job where they didn't pay Social Security taxes.
So, like, if someone worked for years in the private sector, paying into Social Security, and then later got a public sector job with a pension, they could see their Social Security benefits reduced.
Exactly. Like, imagine working for decades in the private sector, you're paying into Social Security diligently, and then you take a public sector job with a pension. And because of that pension, your Social Security benefits could be cut even though you earned both.
Yeah, it doesn't make a lot of sense.
Right. And that's exactly why people were upset. Many people argued that it was unfair to punish people for public service. So this new law tries to fix that by looking at a person's whole work history when figuring out their Social Security benefits.
So this new law really impacts certain groups, right?
Oh, absolutely. We're talking about public sector employees, police officers, firefighters, teachers, even people who split their careers between the private and public sectors.
Yeah, and it's not just like a little extra money either.
Right.
We're talking serious gains.
Oh, yeah. Some people could see an average increase of $360 a month. Imagine that widows and widowers might even see an increase from like $700 to $1,200 a month.
Wow, that's huge.
Yeah, and here's the real kicker. There's also a retroactive lump sum payment going all the way back to January 1st, 2024.
Oh, talk about a bonus. This makes me think about something, though. With people working in so many different fields these days, do you think it's fair to consider someone's entire career when we're calculating their Social Security benefits? Hit that like button if you think this is an interesting conversation, and let us know what you think.
It's complicated. There are good points on both sides. You know, some people argue that if you didn't contribute to Social Security during a certain time, you shouldn't benefit from it. They think the focus should stay on what you paid directly into Social Security.
So it comes down to what's fair in the system.
Right. This new law has definitely stirred up the debate about how we figure out these benefits. And then it gets even trickier when we think about the long-term impact on Social Security as a whole.
Because this isn't just about individual benefits, right? We're talking about the whole system.
Exactly. Adding these benefits for so many people comes with a big price tag. The latest estimates put the cost of the Social Security Fairness Act at a whopping $196 billion. That's a serious amount of money, and it could speed up how fast the Social Security fund runs out.
And this leads right into the whole conversation about whether Social Security can survive in the long term.
You got it.
Uh-oh.
Exactly. Yeah, it really brings up the question of how do we make sure Social Security is still around for future generations?
Right. We can't just keep putting Band-Aids on it. We have to deal with the real problem of keeping the program funded. So what are some ideas for fixing that? I know one we hear a lot about is raising the retirement age.
Yeah, that's a common one. Right now, full retirement age is 67 for anyone born in 1960 or later, but some experts think we should bump that up to like 68 or even 70. The idea is people are living longer so they could work longer and pay into the system more.
But wouldn't that hurt people who have tough physical jobs? Like someone who's worked construction their whole life. They can't work till 70 the same way someone with an office job could.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Yeah.
We have to think about how any changes would affect different groups. Another idea is raising the cap on how much income gets taxed for Social Security.
Can you remind everyone what that cap is?
Sure. So in 2024, only the first $160,200 you earn gets taxed for Social Security. Anything above that doesn't get taxed for Social Security. So raising that cap would mean people who make more would pay more, and that could bring in a lot of money.
Sounds simple, but I bet some people aren't happy about that.
Oh yeah, there's pushback. Some people say it's not fair to high earners, and it might even discourage people from working and investing. And then there's the idea of privatization, which always gets people talking.
Privatization, meaning people could take some of the Social Security money and invest it themselves in things like stocks and bonds.
Exactly. The argument is that people could earn more that way, and they'd have more control over their retirement money.
But the stock market can be risky, right? Is there a chance people could lose their savings?
That's the big argument against it. People worry that it's too risky and it could make the gap between the rich and poor even bigger because some people are better at investing than others.
So it seems like every solution has good and bad sides. Fixing Social Security isn't easy.
You got it. It's complicated. There are no easy answers. We really have to weigh the pros and cons of each option. But there are other ideas too.
What else is out there?
Well, one idea that's getting attention is giving low-income workers more benefits. Maybe by raising the minimum benefit or giving them extra money. This would help people who depend on Social Security the most.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
What about keeping up with the cost of living? Things are getting so expensive.
Right, that's a big deal. Some experts think we should change how we calculate cost of living adjustments or KLAs so that benefits actually keep up with how much prices are rising so retirees don't fall behind.
It's interesting how many different approaches are being considered. It shows how important it is to really understand this and be part of the conversation.
Definitely, Social Security is more than just a program. It's about our promise as a society to take care of people in their later years.
Speaking of being part of the conversation, I'm curious about the effects of the Social Security Fairness Act. We said it helps public servants, first responders, and educators the most. Can you give some examples of how this actually changes people's lives?
Sure. Let's say there's a retired teacher who worked for years in a public school system that didn't pay into Social Security.
Okay.
Under the old rules, her Social Security benefits would have been cut because she also got a pension from her teaching job.
So she was penalized for working in public service.
Exactly. But with the Social Security Fairness Act, that penalty goes away. Now her Social Security benefits will be based on all her work, including her years teaching.
That must make a real difference in how much money she gets each month.
It really does. It's finally recognizing all her hard work. What about someone like a firefighter who worked in a town that wasn't part of Social Security? How do you think this law affects them?
I'd imagine it's similar to the teacher.
Imagine this firefighter spent years protecting people, risking their life working in a system that wasn't part of Social Security. The old rules would have taken away some of their Social Security because they had a pension. But now this new law says, no, you get what you deserve. It recognizes their service without any penalty.
It makes sure that people who risk their lives for us are treated fairly when they retire.
Exactly. And we can't forget about surviving spouses. They often rely on their partner's Social Security to cover their bills. Under the old rules, these benefits could be slashed if the deceased spouse also had a pension from a job not covered by Social Security.
So this new law really helps widows and widowers who are being treated unfairly.
It does. It makes sure they have the financial support they need when they're going through a hard time. These stories show us that the Social Security Fairness Act is really making a difference in people's lives. It's a step towards fixing past wrongs. But it also brings up the bigger question of how do we make sure Social Security survives in the long run?
Right, because this law might help some people, but it also makes the problem of funding Social Security even harder.
It definitely brings the conversation about how to fix Social Security back to the forefront.
It's a big issue with lots of different sides.
Absolutely. We have to understand all the different viewpoints and potential solutions if we want to create a system that's fair and sustainable for everyone.
And we need to remember that Social Security is about more than just money. It's about taking care of each other throughout our lives.
You said it beautifully. It shows that we're committed to making sure everyone has the chance to retire with dignity and peace of mind.
Now let's shift gears a bit. We've been talking a lot about the financial side of things, but retirement is a big change in life, and it's not all about money.
That's a great point.
What I'm thinking about is the human side of it. Retirement is a transition, and it can be hard to adjust to a new phase of life, find purpose, and stay connected with people.
I agree. We tend to focus on the money part of retirement planning, but the emotional and social parts are just as important.
Right? For many people, work is a big part of who they are. It gives them structure. So when they retire, it can be tough to find a new sense of purpose.
Absolutely. And staying connected with people becomes even more important in retirement. Being active in the community can really make a difference in how happy and healthy you are.
So how can we help people make this transition and have a good retirement experience?
I think it starts with encouraging people to see retirement as a chance to grow and explore new things, not just as a time to slow down. It's a time to do things they never had time for before, like traveling, volunteering, spending time with family and friends, or learning something new.
It's about looking forward to what's possible instead of dwelling on what they're leaving behind.
Exactly. And remember, planning for retirement isn't just about the money. It's also about how you'll spend your time, stay active, stay connected.
So it's about taking care of both the practical side and the personal side of retirement.
Exactly. And I think we need to talk about these things just as much as we talk about financial planning.
I agree completely. Now, before we wrap up, let's go back to the idea of making the conversation about Social Security more interesting and easier to understand for everyone.
That's so important. Social Security can seem boring and complicated, but it affects us all. We need to make it relatable and show people how it connects to their lives.
I think one way is to tell stories. Instead of just talking about numbers and policies, let's share stories about real people whose lives have been touched by Social Security stories, about people who need Social Security to survive, stories about how Social Security has changed people's lives, stories about people who are fighting to make sure it's still around in the future.
I love that stories make people feel something. They make the issue real and important.
We can also make it easier to understand by using everyday language and avoiding technical jargon. And let's not forget about visuals. Things like charts, graphs, and infographics can make complex information easier to grasp.
Definitely. And we can use social media and online platforms to reach more people. We can share stories, debunk myths, and get people talking about Social Security.
This is something that affects everyone, and we all need to be part of the conversation.
You're absolutely right. The future of Social Security depends on people being informed and getting involved.
Okay, now before we move on, let's tackle a question that a lot of listeners might have. We've talked about the Social Security Fairness Act, possible solutions to funding problems, and even the emotional side of retirement. But what does all this mean for the individual listener? What can they do today to make sure they have a secure and fulfilling retirement?
That's the big question, and it comes down to a few key things. First, start planning early. The sooner you start thinking about retirement, the better prepared you'll be.
But what if someone's already in their 40s or 50s? Is it too late to start?
It's never too late to start. Of course, the earlier the better because you have more time to save and invest. But even if you're starting later, there are things you can do to catch up and reach your goals.
So what are some practical steps anyone can take regardless of age?
The first thing is to figure out where you stand financially. Look at your income, expenses, assets, and debts. This gives you a clear picture of your finances and what you need to do to reach your retirement goals.
What if someone feels overwhelmed or doesn't know how to do that?
There are tons of resources out there. You've got financial advisors, online tools, workshops, websites, and organizations like AARP. They all offer guidance and support for financial planning. You don't have to figure it out alone.
Once you have a good understanding of your finances, what's next?
It's important to set realistic retirement goals. Think about the kind of lifestyle you want in retirement and how much it will cost. Things like housing, healthcare, travel, and leisure activities. Really picture what you want your retirement to look like.
So having a clear vision helps you plan better.
Exactly. You can create a plan to achieve your goals.
What does a typical retirement plan involve?
A good retirement plan usually includes strategies for saving, investing, and managing your expenses. It might also cover things like healthcare, long-term care, and what happens to your assets after you're gone.
That sounds complicated. Can people handle this on their own, or do they need professional help?
You can definitely do a lot of the planning yourself, but talking to a financial advisor can be helpful, especially if you have a complicated financial situation or if you're not sure about something.
So a financial advisor can help create a plan that fits your specific situation and goals.
Exactly. They can give you advice on investments, taxes, and other important parts of retirement planning.
That's helpful, but not everyone can afford a financial advisor. Are there other options?
Absolutely. You can find fee-only advisors who charge by the hour or for a specific service. There are also robo-advisors, which are online platforms that give you automated investment advice.
So there are options for different budgets and needs.
The key is to find what works for you and be proactive about planning for retirement.
And remember, it's never too early or too late to start. It's important to take action and stay informed about how retirement planning is changing.
Right. Now let's go back to the bigger picture of Social Security's future.
Yes, let's dive back into that. I'm curious about the role of politics in fixing Social Security. There's a lot of talk about reform, but not much action. Why is that?
That's a great question. It shows how complicated the politics of Social Security are. People call it a third rail issue, which means politicians are afraid to touch it because they might upset voters.
So it's seen as politically risky.
Exactly. Politicians are afraid that any changes to Social Security, even if they're meant to improve it, will make people mad. They worry people will think they're taking away benefits or doing something harmful.
But if we wait too long to fix these funding problems, it could hurt everyone in the end, right?
That's the dilemma. The longer we wait, the harder it will be to find solutions, and the more painful those solutions might be.
So how do we get past this political gridlock and find a way forward?
It starts with education and honest conversations. We need to talk about the problems facing Social Security and what will happen if we do nothing.
These conversations need to include people of all ages and political views.
Absolutely. This isn't just an issue for retirees or people nearing retirement. It affects everyone, and we need everyone to work together to find solutions.
So how can we encourage these conversations and make sure everyone's voice is heard?
There are a few things you can do. You can contact your elected officials and tell them what you think about Social Security. You can go to town hall meetings and community forums. You can join groups that are working to protect and improve Social Security.
And of course, we can use our own platforms and social media to raise awareness and have productive conversations.
Exactly. The more we talk about Social Security openly, the better our chances of finding solutions that work for everyone.
So while the future of Social Security might seem uncertain, there's also reason to be hopeful. If we stay informed, participate in discussions, and advocate for change, we can help make sure this important program is still around for future generations.
I couldn't agree more. This is a challenge that requires us to work together and find solutions that benefit everyone.
Now let's lighten things up a bit. We've been serious about Social Security, but there are so many myths and misconceptions about it that it's almost funny.
Oh, absolutely. There's so much misinformation out there. It's crazy.
Like the one about Social Security going bankrupt?
Right. Social Security is not going bankrupt. It has funding problems, but it's not going away. It's important to get that straight.
Or the claim that the government is stealing from the Social Security Trust Fund.
Another myth. The trust fund is invested in U.S. Treasury securities, which are considered one of the safest investments in the world.
And then there's the idea that younger generations won't get anything from Social Security.
That's just not true. Social Security is designed to work for multiple generations. It will still be there for future generations, although the benefits might be smaller if we don't fix the funding problem.
It's important to separate fact from fiction when we talk about Social Security.
Absolutely. You have to make sure you're getting your information from reliable sources.
Right. Don't believe everything you read on social media or hear from relatives, even if they mean well.
Exactly. Stick to trustworthy sources like the Social Security Administration's website, financial institutions and organizations like AARP.
Let's have some fun debunking these myths. What are some of the craziest or funniest misconceptions you've heard about Social Security?
Oh, I've heard some real doozies, like the one about Social Security numbers being connected to microchips in our brains.
What?
I know it sounds ridiculous, but I've actually met people who believe this.
Wow, it's amazing how quickly misinformation can spread.
It really is. That's why it's so important to think critically and check the facts before you share information.
Okay, here's another one I've heard people say, that if you die before you retire, all the money you paid into Social Security is gone.
Myth alert. Your spouse or dependents might be able to get benefits based on your work record.
So it's not like you have to use it or lose it.
Exactly. Social Security is there to protect individuals and families even if someone dies.
Okay, last one. I've heard people say they're better off investing their own money instead of paying into Social Security.
That's a risky move. Social Security guarantees you'll have income for the rest of your life no matter what happens in the stock market.
So it's like a form of insurance, especially when the economy is uncertain.
Exactly. And it also gives you more than just retirement income. It provides disability and survivor benefits, too.
So while it's important to plan for retirement and consider different investment options, we also need to recognize the value of Social Security as part of a well-rounded retirement plan.
Absolutely. Social Security is a safety net for so many Americans, and it's something we need to protect and strengthen.
Okay, so we've covered a lot about Social Security, all the nuts and bolts, the issues it's facing, and some possible solutions. But I feel like there's another important side to all this that we haven't really talked about.
Oh, interesting. What are you thinking about?
Well, we've really focused on the financial part. But what about the human part? Retirement's a huge change in life. And it's not just about the money, you know? It's about adjusting to a new phase, finding purpose, and staying connected with people.
You're so right. We tend to focus on the money side of retirement planning, but the emotional and social parts are just as important for a happy retirement.
Exactly. For a lot of people, their job is a big part of who they are. It gives them a routine. So when that's gone, it can be hard to find a new sense of purpose.
Absolutely. And those social connections you have, they become even more important when you retire. Staying active in your community can make a huge difference in how you feel overall.
So how can we help people go through this change and make retirement a good experience?
Well, I think it starts with helping people see retirement as a chance to grow and try new things, not just as a time to relax and take it easy. It's an opportunity to do things they never had time for before, like travel, volunteer, spend time with family and friends, learn something new.
It's about looking ahead to what's possible and not focusing on what they're leaving behind.
Exactly. And it's not just about planning your finances. It's also about planning how you'll spend your time, stay active, stay connected.
So it's about planning for both the practical and personal side of retirement.
Exactly. And we need to talk about these things just as much as we talk about financial planning.
Absolutely. Now, before we wrap up, I want to go back to the idea of making Social Security easier for everyone to understand and more engaging to talk about.
That's a great goal. Social Security can seem like a dry topic, but it affects everyone. We have to find ways to make it relatable and show people why it matters to them.
One way I think we can do that is through stories. Instead of just throwing numbers and policies at people, let's share stories about real people whose lives have been affected by Social Security. People who depend on it to survive. People whose lives have been changed by it. People who are fighting to protect its future.
I love that idea. Stories connect with people on a deeper level and make the issue feel more personal.
We can also make it easier to understand by using simple language, avoiding all the jargon and technical terms. And we shouldn't forget about visuals. Charts, graphs, and infographics can really help people understand complex information.
Absolutely. And we can use social media and the internet to reach more people. We can share stories, debunk myths, and get people talking about Social Security.
This is a topic that affects us all, and it's a conversation we all need to be part of.
You're right. The future of Social Security depends on people being informed and getting involved.
And if you found today's conversation helpful, we encourage you to hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss future episodes where we'll dive into other interesting topics.
We're always looking for ways to make complex issues more understandable and engaging.
Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.